You ready? Let's see, it is morning, so good morning to you for another half hour or so. All sorts of things this month. Of course, it's Arizona Statehood Day. We were just having a discussion about that this morning. 1912, so what is this, our 112th birthday. So we're pretty good at surviving, I think. So congratulate yourselves. And today, of course, is Valentine's Day. So happy Valentine's Day to everybody. We won't get into the history of Valentine's Day, but it's the thought that actually counts. Ash Wednesday, and this is African American History Month. So there is so much going on, and our museum is really a part of this too. So we feel like we're really contributing. Question I sometimes ask, how many here are members of the History Society? Very good. The rest of you, get out. Leave. Or go to the... Well, see, congratulations. That makes me feel better. And look what you're getting for your money. You didn't have to pay to come in here for today's lunch talks. Mention my name and they'll let you in free. Maybe not. But for those of you who are not members, it's the old lecture that the society really exists for its membership and what we're able to contribute to the museum. One of the things that's very important is when we go out for grants or donations, potential contributors will ask, how big is our membership? Do we have membership? That sort of thing. And so the cost is minimal, but it indicates your support for what we do and support for the museum and the city of Tempe. All the money that we garner goes back to the museum through the various community activities that the museum is able to provide. As usual, our lunch talks are sponsored by Friendship Village, who has been a long partner with us, and we are very grateful for that because it's enabled us to really hope, I don't want to demean anything that happened before, but improve our ability to attract good speakers and enhance our program. And I want to introduce to you Mark Young, who is the marketing director at Friendship Village. And on behalf of all of us, want to thank Friendship Village for its continuing sponsorship. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I came in here today very happy to celebrate Arizona's birthday, and started talking with Vic, and he says it's a very serious day. We're gonna take this very seriously. So, in all seriousness, we love this program, and we will continue to support this program. Today's lecture is kind of interesting and on point for me today. I'm part of a group at Friendship Village that started a DEI program, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's always been there at Friendship Village, organically, it's always been there. But we've really taken it to another level, and our residents are very hungry for this type of community, this type of involvement, this type of awareness. And I think today is just one step further in creating that for others. So thank you for allowing me to speak today, and we will continue to support this, and thank you.
And of course, Mark has promised over $10,000 in support for next time, and you heard it first here, and now he's quietly sneaking out of the room, and I don't understand why. All right. To our program today, this is unique because I think you're going to find out some things about the history of our college institution, now a university, in Tempe. And it fits very well into what Mark was discussing with inclusion and diversity and that sort of thing. So we've invited Shannon Walker to be here, and I'm always hesitant to read all of the bios because we wouldn't invite anybody that wasn't qualified to speak on a particular subject, except for me, because they don't have a bio on me anyway. So, but she sees both the ASU University Archives and the archival collections at Thunderbird School of Global Management. And she's responsible for collecting information, helping on research and duplication of documents, and also facilitating the selection of what goes into the collection, which is extremely vast. Now, I learned something today that the majority of the collection, somewhat like a museum, is off-site out at Polytech campus. And that really tells us why ASU is critical to understanding not only the history of the university, but overall history in the Valley and in Arizona. She's got all sorts of credentials that I could read to you, but I think when you hear her speak, you'll understand why she is served as president of the Arizona Archives Alliance, and Arizona Historical Records Advisory Board, just a lot. And so we're very delighted today to have Shannon Walker with us, and please give her a nice warm welcome.
Thank you. So good morning, buenos dias. Right, Chris? Buenos dias. I told her I'm learning Spanish, so I'm going to practice a little. I've only been learning for 2 months, though, so I don't know much. Thank you for inviting me to speak today. I'm honored to share these stories, the story of Stella McHenry, and to talk about the early history of Black students at Arizona State University. As mentioned, I'm currently the University Archivist at ASU. I've been in this position for about 4 years, and I've been at ASU for a little over 9 years now. So let's see, I'm going to start here. So our story starts with a list of firsts. You see this on a lot of websites and things. It's a handy list, right? The first thing is milestones. But they can also be problematic for different reasons. So some of the firsts on our ASU lists are the first permanent building on campus. Anyone have an idea what's the first permanent building? Old Main, yeah, for sure. There were other buildings that were temporary and torn down. The first mascot? Bulldog, yep, good job. And the first women's sport? Basketball. Yeah, didn't know that, huh? There's a lot of great pictures of women in bloomers playing basketball on a dirt court. So that's a lecture maybe for another day. So these lists are handy, but problematic for different reasons. So I'll talk about that here in a minute. So one day, we received an email from someone letting us know that the person that we had listed as the first Black female graduate of the school might be incorrect, as they believed that their family member graduated earlier than the person that we listed, Mrs. Love Jordan, who graduated in 1928. So this is one of the reasons why these lists are complicated. They can be difficult to update, to keep current. They can be inaccurate. you have to just kind of admit that you might be wrong. They often leave out marginalized communities. For instance, on this list, which I've inherited from whoever did it before me, there are no firsts for the Asian community. There's no first for Native American students either on here. So that's something that we need to add or maybe eliminate altogether, I don't know. But I've been asked these specific questions. When did the first Native American student attend ASU? So it'd be handy to have the list at least as a starting place. But these lists can also serve to amplify the predominantly white population and their achievements. And because it is a list, it lacks the historical context that might be needed to understand the significance of being the first, right? So there's a lot of ways the lists are faulty. But we know it's our human nature to want to celebrate firsts, right? We do. And it's an easy access point for history. So they can be helpful. We just have to recognize that they're kind of imperfect. They're flawed. In our case, we did the research. We verified that Stella or Estella McHenry was indeed the first Black female graduate at the newly named Tempe State Teachers College in 1925. Stella came to the normal school from the town of Clifton, a small mining town east of Globe. There's a whole history of mining towns. You can talk to Chris Marin if you want to find out more about that. She always educates me about the mining towns. Stella's father worked as a smelter operator in the copper mines in Clifton. During our research, we found a newspaper from the area called the Copper Era, which is on the Arizona Memory Project site. If you have ever visited that site, there's a lot of good stuff there. It listed Stella and several McHenry relatives as being high achievers in the local colored, quote unquote, school in Clifton, which is what the schools were segregated there. By 1923, the McHenry family lived in Miami. I know I don't say it right, Miami, Arizona. Chris will help me. According to the Daily Silver Belt of September 4th, the newspaper published in Miami, Stella rode the local stage, a small bus, from Miami to Tempe to attend Tempe Normal School and complete her teacher's diploma, which she did in June of 1925. So it's important to think about what the school and the town were like when Stella arrived, right, in 1925. Very different from the way it is right now. I'm going to read an excerpt from the catalog, the bulletin, from 1923 and 1924, the school trying to sell itself. It's kind of an interesting read, but it's describing the campus at the time. It says, Tempe is a thriving town of 2,500 inhabitants. Different today, right? Distant, only 20 minutes ride from Phoenix, the capital of Arizona, with which it is connected by an automobile stage line, giving prompt and efficient service. Lying near the center of population of the state, Tempe is conveniently reached by rail over the Arizona Eastern, which gives us direct connection with the main lines of the South Pacific and Santa Fe systems, thus bringing even the most distant counties within 8 to 20 hours journey. Sounds convenient, right? The convenient railway connections are appreciated by those students who desire to make the most of the holiday vacations. One of the main state highways passes through the town, skirting the edge of campus. The streets are paved and lined with shade trees. The water supply coming from deep wells is ample and of excellent quality. The town is situated in the midst of the Salt River Valley, whose fertile fields surround it, delighting the eye with their perpetual verdure and ensuring an unfailing supply of fresh fruits and vegetables. The climate during the whole year is not only delightful, but wholesome and conducive to study. Snow is unknown, and outdoor athletics and field excursions are carried on throughout the year. Sounds delightful, right? It makes you want to sign up and come, right? So to find out more about Stella, let me see here. I think that's the right one. Okay. This was this is actually a picture of, from ASU Thrive magazine, which is the alumni magazine. If you're an alum, you probably get this. It's kind of in the back of one of the issues about the story about Stella. And her family member, who I'll talk about in a minute, connected us with some photographs of Stella and her siblings in Clifton, in or around the Clifton area. Okay. To find out more about Stella, we searched through resources in university archives, including yearbooks, commencement programs, catalogs, club and sports records, and the like. We also contacted the registrar's office, who keeps the official records of student attendance and graduation. We then expanded our search to look at birth and death certificates, local newspapers, and property deeds. I think we just realized that students are students for a short amount of time. If we want to find out more about their lives, we have to broaden our search and not just look at the records we have at ASU. So, and part of the process was considering what we didn't find. I know that sounds strange, but what we do not see. For example, when we looked at the yearbooks for their corresponding reasons, why was Stella not listed with other students in clubs or sports or dormitories? So in archival research, sometimes what we do not find can be as telling as what we find, right? Those gaps, or archival silences, what we call them, can speak volumes. As an example, another story, I'm working with a student who's been doing research on Japanese American students at ASU during World War II and how their education was impacted by the War Relocation Authority. That's a presentation and discussion for another day, but there's a lot that's not said in the record, we'll just say that. So it's also extremely helpful, can't even understate it, is how helpful this resource has been to us. This was the Tempe history of African American experience in Tempe. So this has been great for us because Stella is actually mentioned in here. From it, we found mention that Stella lived with a family in Tempe. I believe was the only Black family that owned a home in Tempe. They boarded Stella during her time as a student. It's significant to note because during this time and up until I believe 1960s, the city was unofficially called a sundown town, meaning people of color were permitted to work in town, but encouraged to live outside the city. That included students. So you can imagine how difficult it would be for students like Stella to overcome this obstacle. What is interesting about this discussion is that the issues of housing and transportation can still be barriers for students today. So if you've ever tried to park on campus, you know that it's impossible. So coming back to Stella's story, we discovered that after graduation in June of 1925, she worked as a teacher in one of the elementary schools for Black children on the south side of downtown Phoenix. Unfortunately, though, in 1928, just 3 short years after graduating, Stella died of influenza. So her life was just tragically cut short. It's very unfortunate. So even though Stella's stories took a sad turn, many good things have come out of this project and the research. One of the best parts of the journey for me has been building relationship with Stella's family, so getting to know her family and the other families of Black students who have reached out to us. So Michelle Neptune McHenry, who's pictured on the right here with me, this is us. We were on PBS Horizon. We did a little interview about this. So Michelle is the one who actually originally reached out to us. I was hoping Michelle could be here today. She can't be here today. She might be online. If you're online, Michelle, thank you. She was married to Joseph McHenry, who was Stella's nephew. So working with Michelle has taught me so many things. Most importantly, listening to community members. And that may mean many phone calls, many emails, many conversations. Michelle and I talked for a long time. And I've also been reminded that projects or things like this are not one and done projects. They're a relationship and investment in people and communities. So, and Michelle lent me some pictures to be able to share. This is her husband, Joseph. He grew up in Phoenix, McHenry, and served in the Army National Guard. He was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, one of approximately 600 black helicopter pilots out of the more than 40,000 who served in Vietnam as pilots. Michelle generously shared these photos of the McHenry, Joseph McHenry with us, so that would be Stella's nephew. Okay, so at this time I want to pivot a little bit and talk about the first black male graduate of Tempe Normal School. His name is Benton James. So Benton is someone that we always knew he was the first black male. He didn't quite have the same journey as us discovering Stella, but we decided this year to sort of dive in a little bit and learn more about him, more about Benton. After doing some research, we found out that Benton graduated from Phoenix Union High School in 1921 and then attended the Tempe Normal School. He earned his teaching diploma in January of 1924, and so he and Stella probably overlapped a little bit, maybe a semester, maybe a whole year. And then we recently worked with ASU News to publish an article about Benton, and actually for the whole month there are going to be things featured in social media about Benton. So you'll learn more about Benton if you're online a little bit. But Benton is also, I mean, this year is 100 years since he graduated. It's incredible to think he actually graduated in January, so a little bit early, or not the May graduation. So let's look at one more photograph. Okay, so as we look at this photograph, which I'll talk about in a minute, I wanted to take a minute to think about how remarkable it was for Stella and for Benton to decide to come to the Tempe Normal School in the early 1920s. Right, at that time, Phoenix public schools were segregated. This was true until the early 1950s, after Brown versus Board of Education made it illegal to segregate education. However, we know integration did not happen overnight, but it happened gradually. In addition, for students like Stella and Benton, it was very likely that their families had endured discrimination in employment and in housing opportunities. We should recognize how difficult it may have been for them to sit in a classroom of white classmates being the one or only a few persons of color. Did they have the same opportunities as their peers for student housing, for clubs, for sports, and for activities? Historically, we know they probably did not. We don't see either of them listed in any rosters of student groups in the back of the yearbook. So as we think about these things, you have to appreciate the courage and determination that these truly pioneering students, for whom the dream of an education outweighed the obstacles they knew they would face, right? I'm sure they were not naive to what it would be like to go to school at Tempe. So this photograph is of the Dunbar Social and Literary Club from the 1940 yearbook. So it's one of the only African-American student groups on campus that we've seen. Everyone is happy and delightful. I love this picture. It's exciting to see that within 10 to 15 years of Benton and Stella graduating, that there were many more black students attending the school and that they became a community of students. So our work has just begun. We'd like to explore a lot more stories, especially of early graduates from ASU. This was an interesting discovery. So on this page of the 1928 yearbook, we see Love Hatton Jordan, and she's kind of on the right in the white blouse. And she was the one who was actually listed originally as the first graduate. And then, when we looked at the whole page, we could see that these are all black students, black women students on one page. So the 5 of them were there together in 1928. We want to find out more about them. We're going to do more research. On this page, there are 2 sisters, Catherine and Sarah Garrett from Douglas, Arizona, as well as Madalena Cook, Moselle Mack, and then Love Hatton Jordan. So again, they all have their own stories. They all had their own journeys to come to school. So we'll continue to do research and find out more about them so we can tell their stories. And there are many more. You may have heard of Emerson Harvey. He was the first varsity black football player at ASU. The Journal of Arizona History did a nice article on him recently, if you want to read more about that. In addition, there are stories like Jesse Wilmer Jones, who received one of the first PhDs, period, at ASU. He was the first, there were 3 that first year in 1963. He happened to be African American, so he was the first African American and one of the first recipients. And after getting his doctorate in chemistry, he became a dedicated professor in the Dallas area. And part of his mission was to increase the number of Black and minority students who went on to graduate school and medical school. In February of 2023, he received an education award for his efforts. So I often get asked, why are these stories important, right? I think they're interesting, right? We get a lot out of them. But why is it important to share these stories? And why is it important to talk about the history of Black students at ASU? And I'm learning, to be honest, I'm learning along with all of you. But what I have learned so far from my colleagues and from community members that I've talked to is that representation is really important, especially if you're a part of an institution where most people do not look like you, predominantly white, and ASU is. It's important to see yourself represented and reflected in the history of your institution. It's important for ownership and inclusion and belonging, right? I've also learned that inclusion matters. Being included in history and the legacy of an institution makes a difference, right? It makes a difference in your engagement. Inclusion as a student means that you can be engaged, your voice is heard, and your contributions are valued. I'm not sure if that was Stella or Benton's experience as they completed their degree. Were they able to engage? Was their voice heard in class discussions? Were their contributions valued? I don't know. An institution that claims to be inclusive should consider these questions. So I also want to note, I'm kind of winding down here, for those of you who didn't know, that in 1964, June 3rd, Martin Luther King Jr. spoke on the campus of ASU in Tempe at Goodwin Stadium. So this year marks the 60th anniversary of that talk. The talk, we have a recording, there's a whole story behind all of that, but it's available online if you want to know. I can give you the link. His speech was recorded. So this year there's a lot of celebrations going on campus in honor of this anniversary, and I'm part of a group that is designing a permanent display that's going to be in Durham Hall. We hope that it'll be unveiled on June 3rd. Fingers crossed that will come out. So just keep an eye out for more information about these events in the coming months. So again, our goal at ASU and as part of the Community-Driven Archives Initiative, which is the department that I am within the library, it's to identify, recognize, and celebrate all communities, but especially communities of color at ASU, Black, Asian, and Indigenous, recognizing that ASU is a predominantly white institution and their stories have been muted. It's especially important to consider the early history of the school and the students who chose to overcome significant obstacles and forge pathways for generations of students after them, as this serves as an inspiration for all students. So thank you again for inviting me. I wanted to let you know about Black Collections at ASU. This is a new repository, a new group in our library specific to the Black community, so at ASU as well as Phoenix and Arizona at large. The curator of that is my colleague Jessica Salo, who's up there. Jessica couldn't be here today, she had another engagement, but we do have some bookmarks in the back with her information on it, just a handy bookmark too. So thank you though for letting me speak today. I'm happy to answer questions about anything. I can try, but I thank you just for the honor of being here. And again, thank you for listening and engaging with me. So thank you.
I'm sure that, hello, is that working all right? All right, yeah, we've got some questions, but
Sure.
First let me mention that you talked about the African American Experience in Tempe book. Jared Smith in the back is the one responsible for that. And not on that subject, but Jared will be presenting next month at our lunch talk. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. A couple of questions come to mind. Stella commuted from Miami, which is a little bit over 70 miles, and back then would have probably been a 2-hour ride back and forth. Was that because she lived there, or she couldn't find a place to live in the valley?
Well, I think she lived in Tempe with the black family. I can't remember their name. Thomas's, maybe is yeah, okay. But yeah, she did have to make that trek from at the beginning of the school year and on breaks from Miami to the Tempe area. So not a quick turnaround. I'll be home for the weekend to do my laundry kind of, visit. So.
And that would have been before the road was paved, just
Absolutely.
to put it into a context. The tunnel at Superior, I think, predated that. So,
Probably, yeah.
that shortened
Right.
the trip a little bit.
And I'll add to that. We know that Benton James lived in downtown Phoenix. So he did make that commute, that daily commute, or whenever his classes were, from downtown to here, which may seem like not a big deal again, but there were no roads, no cars, maybe bicycle, maybe buggy, horse. We're not sure how he made that commute, but
And you said that Tempe was still a sundown town?
correct.
In the 1950s, or
Yes,
until the civil rights legislation?
exactly.
That's pretty shocking. That's pretty chilling. So could any of these black students been able to live in the housing that the school had at the time?
Again, we don't see like a definitive policy saying they can't live there, but it may have been sort of an unwritten rule, an implied boundary, perhaps.
Any sense of why ASU was 40 years old in 1925, that it took so long for a black student to attend the school?
From what we can see in records, ASU has the earliest 24 and 25 occurrence of black students attending. When I've reached out to colleagues at U of A and NAU, their first black students were in the 1930s. So I think for the reasons we talked about, all the obstacles, right, made it difficult for them to feel welcome or encouraged to come here. And but the need was there was definitely a need for teachers in the state, and that's what the normal school was a teacher certification education institution, right? And so it's kind of a sort of a dichotomy. We're gonna keep schools segregated, but we need black teachers, but how can they get educated to become black teachers, right? And so finally there was sort of a breakthrough, like we have to admit who we can to get more teachers.
I was going to ask the question about women at the school, but generally in the era that ASU started, and probably for quite a few years afterward, certainly after 1925, women were more likely to be teachers. It was one of the few jobs
Correct.
that
Yeah.
they could get.
Yeah, absolutely. Most of the university, really up until World War II, it was mostly women students, and just a fraction of men. Then after the war, that changed. So.
And just one other, you kind of hinted at it, but although nothing may have been stated directly, was there a sense of welcoming or unwelcoming to minority students? And that not only includes black students, but Mexican students and other minorities.
I have no idea. I really don't know, so I can't speculate on that. I mean, I think the only things I have heard from students who graduated from the school later in the 1970s or 80s, who at that time even faced discrimination in their classes. And so I am pretty sure it was happening before that too. So, I mean, I think the best people to speak for that are the students who attended and their experience, so.
You know, we always want to think about perfection and inclusion and to learn some of these stories. It's tough enough to go to college
It is.
and get a degree.
It's so
but
hard.
when you're facing either overt or implied discrimination, that makes it even more of a challenge.
Absolutely.
So, yes, we've got a question. Wait till I get back there. Why is it always way in the back?
That has
All
the
right,
question.
I'm coming. Here we go. We got to use the microphone because we're streaming this. So,
Yes.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Hi.
Hi.
My first question, my first thing is a statement. He asked the question, why did it happen in the 1920s? Is because historically, African Americans went to historical black colleges. There was none west of Texas. I mean, so that was it. That's why ASU had to do it, because it wasn't like they wanted us there. It was because they needed us, because there were no teachers being taught on this side because of the fact that West Texas was the farthest west that African American colleges went to. So that's my answer to that one. And second
Thank
off,
you.
when did Stella pass away? What age was she? Because I didn't get that part. I wanted to know how old she was when she died. I heard you say she died a few years after graduation, but I
Right.
didn't get her age.
I'll have to look back at the birth certificate. She died in 1928. I think she was born in 1903, maybe 1904. So she was just very young, in her early 20s. Yeah, early 20s. I can find out for you, though.
All
Yep.
right, we're moving over in this direction.
Thank you for the lecture.
Yep.
2 blocks down and just across Rule Street, my parents bought a house in 1967 on La Jolla when those houses were first built. And on that street, 2 African American families moved in, and one of them immediately put security bars on the window. I think they were afraid of the reception they would get, and I admire their courage for coming.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Someone, were you asking? Oh. Any other questions? It's really a remarkable story, and I'm impressed by the fact that when we first knew that you were going to talk about this one person, the first black female graduate, you kind of think that's the end of the story, but now you're bringing in so many other things. We haven't thought about the first African American male that attended the school, other minorities that were there. It becomes a much more complex construct than just one person. I mean, her accomplishments are remarkable, but on the other hand, there's so many nuances that
Yes,
this probably opens the door to, well, we need to learn more about this, or we need
for sure.
to learn more about that.
Yeah, definitely. Did you have a question?
Shannon, offhand, what's the percentage of black students at ASU now, and is the issue settled now? Is it pretty fair?
I don't know what the demographics are right now. I can find out though. I'm not sure what you mean by is the issue settled, because there aren't enough. So I would say it's maybe 30 or 40% are students of color. It's still a predominantly white institution, but don't quote me on that because I don't have the statistics. But yeah, are there any ASU graduates here? Oh, there's a lot. Yay! I would love to hear about your experience as a student. If you are a student in one of the marginalized communities, what was it like for you? And or if you're not, yeah, we'd love to hear about your experience.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I attended ASU in the late 80s, and we had a black student union, I remember, and they were so receptive. I remember the one guy driving me around in his little moped. It was a moped days. But the thing was, we knew that we were very few. And I remember I was an English major, being the only one. in almost every class. Every once in a while, I may have a class with, there were maybe 2 of us, but it was not, that we were not prominent there. I then started going to the West Campus because I knew there were more African American teachers there. And I had 2 African American teachers when I was at the West Campus. And I felt really great to have met them and to be able to have teachers of color, because when I was at Maine, I never had an African American teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had a slide where the ladies were on that one page and they were all African American. Do you know why they ended up on the same page?
Nope, that's a great question. It's a really good question. Thank you, Chris.
My name is Dr. Christine Marin, Professor Emeritus at ASU. Shannon is my friend and my colleague, University Archivist. I am an archivist as well, but I'm now retired.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the article in Thrive magazine about Stella McHenry, and the caption said, Miami, Arizona, 1923. I became curious because my parents were born and raised in Miami, Arizona. We lived in Miami, Arizona. I recognized in the picture of Stella McHenry in the background a picture of the smelter, the International Smelter, Miami, Arizona. Only those of us who are from Miami, Arizona, or Globe, Arizona, would recognize the background picture of the smelter, of the International Smelter. I read that Stella McHenry's father was a laborer at the smelter in Clifton. I became curious and did a little bit of my own research that I shared with my friend Shannon, and this is what I learned about Stella.
Yep.
And I am just making my own assumptions based on my work. After learning that her family was in Miami in 1923, and finding that article in the local Miami newspaper, the Daily Silver Belt, stating that she rode the bus from Miami to Phoenix, 1923. Assuming she was a student, maybe home for the weekend when the picture was taken, I'm just guessing, but in 1923 she was still attending Tempe Normal School. 1923, in that picture of her father, and the background photo of the International Smelter. My grandfather worked at that International Smelter as well in the same period of time. Francisco Renteria is his name. But in this period of time, the mines that were there adjacent to the International Smelter was the Miami Copper Company, the Cleve Van Dyke Copper Mine, the Inspiration Consolidated Copper Company. They all employed African American laborers or miners, Mexican-American miners, immigrants who were coming to Miami to work in these mines. Just below in the background photo of Stella with the caption Miami, Arizona, and you see the smelter in the background, you see a little bit of the housing. The companies provided housing for its workers. Just below the entrance area, miners walked to work. Just below the hillside, where you see the International Smelter, you see a little bit of the housing where Stella's family may have lived, 1923. Where my family lived, my mother and her mother, my grandmother, and her great-grandmother. There is a picture that I have in my photo album that shows my mother with my older brothers as toddlers and my grandmother with them. In the background is that smelter. But they lived in the housing today and then that was called Van Winkle Canyon. If you know anything about mining towns, and if you know the structures that are mining structures, or if you know anything about housing, you automatically assume, or you can make the assumption, that housing for workers being provided by the mines wasn't always well done. They were wood-framed homes. Some people called them shacks, but they were living accommodations provided by the mine operators or the companies for its workers. And in the background of Stella with her brother in this photograph here, and you see the caption 1923, it is Winkleman Canyon that they are living in, because that is where workers of color lived. The men who worked at the smelter or at the mines. They lived in Winkleman Canyon, which is still there, which is very different. Across the street from Winkleman Canyon is the George Washington Elementary School, called the Lower Miami School. That is where the Mexicans went to school because there was segregation in 1923. There was the Mexican school. African American students, children, I'm assuming her brother and maybe others, went to the black school in Miami called the Thomas Jefferson Elementary School. So when you start looking at photographs, those of you who are historians or enthusiasts of history, and you see the backgrounds in your photos, also look at what you see may be landmarks or structures that are maybe not identified today, but you become curious about where people lived, what did it look like where they lived, not only who they were, but how are they dressed, things that tell you in a photograph a little bit about the history of that family. So my curiosity about Stella McHenry grew from my friendship and from my colleague, Shannon, and talking about Stella McHenry. It was very typical in early Arizona for African American students to be listed in the very back of their high school class, their high school yearbook. The last page was always showing African American students in every high school yearbook in Arizona, including Globe High School, Miami High School, Bisbee High School, and other high schools. The very last page was only African American graduates. That practice continued, I don't know for how long, but if you look at your yearbook, if you're a graduate from a high school of Arizona, perhaps you will see on the last page the African American students of that year in that yearbook. So you see what you can discover in the things that you might learn if you come from your own hometown of Arizona. You become curious about how you lived, how others lived. That's what led to my curiosity. Being a historian that I am, I had to have answers. So now I have answers that I share with Shannon to this day. We are going to be talking more about Stella McHenry. I'm still going to be doing research with her. And I thank Shannon and my colleague, Jessica Salo, for doing the kind of work that they're doing at the University Archives at the Hayden Library. And I honor also Stella McHenry today.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Chris.
We were talking too about the African American experience at ASU. So why don't you give us your perspective?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Burdetta. I don't know if anybody know, I am Councilmember Hodge also. How you doing? So, and it's important to say that because right now you have two history-making people in the room at the same time. You have me, I'm the first African American woman to be elected in the city of Tempe.
Awesome.
And the first to the Tempe as African American woman to be elected to city council. And Councilman Garland here is the first Native American to be elected in the city. And I just wanted to put that out there. My experience with ASU was different. I was in the 90s. It was a very, very interesting time. It was a lot of racial splits between that time. There was a lot of things going on. And when I went to ASU, just like what she said, it wasn't very many African Americans in each room. And when I went there, I just never felt like I fit in. So I went there, and it was very uncomfortable for me to be there. And this is in the 90s. So it wasn't like they made it. The only solitude I found was with the Black Student Union.
Amen.
That I went to.
Yep.
And I had to actually go to a semester at Spelman in Atlanta to understand what it meant to be an African American woman and to feel comfortable in my skin. When I came back to ASU, I finished. But I'll tell you this, I hear that from the African American students today, as the date today, that they still don't feel very comfortable there with what's going on. So to know that, I want us to understand that we can learn from history, but if we're not fixing history, it's still just gonna be history. It's not gonna be a fact. So I wanted to give you an example of what it felt like, and probably why I will say ASU I will thank them for me sitting in 2 offices today because I want to be the change that I didn't see when I was there. Thank you.
Thank you. This gets me wondering also, we've talked about black students attending ASU. When did ASU have the first African-American instructor or professor or graduate from the school?
I think Chris knows the first instructor. We're working on, yep. What year, Chris? What year? 1963. The first professor of education. Okay, yeah, and again, we want to continue to do this research and tell more of the stories of these
That's a
first.
huge surprise. 1963, when your first black student graduated in 1925, and it took 40 more years almost. You know, there's so much further distance to go in how we interact with each other in the schools. We want to believe that we're better off than we are, but I think one of the negative contributors to a lot of the bias today, of course, is social media, and that many people that subscribe to social media are looking for thoughts and opinions that equal theirs. So they're not looking for balance. And I think we're in a period of regression, as much as I hate to say it, before things will start to turn around again. And recognizing the real history of something like ASU is critically important, because that's the institution that prepares people for the future. And Lon was asking the question about percentages. I'm not sure if things are real valid today, because ASU is over 100,000.
Over 150,000.
If
you include online students, it's over 150,000. Yeah.
150,000
Enrollment,
students.
yeah.
And that makes it a real challenge for advisors and those working with the students. Where do they get the individual attention that they often need? And 150,000 is bigger than a lot of the cities in Arizona. So it really is a challenge, and it's important to recognize and admit to negative issues that an institution like ASU experienced. If you try to cover it up, well, it wasn't that bad, didn't mean that much, it did. And so there's still a long ways to go. ASU has done a miraculous job in the sciences, but are they doing enough in the human sciences and that sort of thing?
Yeah.
One last question from anyone?
Yeah, any comments from, I know a lot of people raised their hand, they were students, so I would love to hear about your experience as a student if you have something to say, so. No, yes.
All right, let me get over here.
Hello, I'm Rosemary James, and I finished in 1969. I received my master's at ASU. It was very uncomfortable. I heard that word uncomfortable back there. And for me, here's why. Last year, I did a talk here on growing up in Jim Crow South. It was because in '65, my husband and I came to Arizona from Louisiana, Jim Crow South. I felt like I was thrown into this white world, including my experience at ASU. So I was most of the time the only black in classes. And so coming from that kind of background, you can imagine how I felt looking around at all of these white faces, and I'm the only black there. So it was uncomfortable. But I plowed through it anyhow because my dad always said to us, you get a good education, because that is your ticket to success in life. And that always played in my mind. So, and I've been doing that ever since, and he was right. It has brought me to where I am today, where truly I am enjoying life. Even though it is difficult to live in the skin like I have as a black person, it still is. But we are making progress too. Really, I have hope. I can see that in living and participating in the kind of activities that I am now. I am a nut for diversity. I am so engaged in doing workshops and so forth in the area of diversity because I know it's making a difference. And we just need to know about each other. We need to hear our stories. You need to know me and I need to know you in order for us to finally realize that we all need each other and the world is better if we just accept and stop this discrimination stuff, okay?
Yep.
So thank you for this talk. It was inspiring, eye-opening, and I just beg all of you to keep moving forth, getting to know all people, okay? People who look like me, people who look like you, because that's what I'm doing, and it's making a difference in my life and the life of other people. So thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much.
And to that I say amen.
I think that's a mic drop moment right there, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Let me thank you for coming today. I think this was really a valuable bit of information, not only about one person, but the discussion of peeling the onion back and getting so much more information. We do have a little gift for you, and I thought this might do well in the archives if it's not there. Arizona Buildings with a History.
Perfect.
By Richard Nearing. I keep giving Richard a lot of credit. He passed away a couple of years ago, but in an incredible pen and ink artist for which I had no jealousy, and even after I broke his fingers, he was still able to draw pretty well, and that was terrific. So thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Let me give you a little bit of information about what's coming up. Next month, the second Wednesday will be March 13th. Not an unlucky day, but a good lucky day on a Wednesday. Our own Jared Smith, there in the back, will be presenting Forgotten Tempe, Phantom Places from the Past that Shape the Present. Now, you need to know and understand that for most of the month of March, this museum will be suffering an invasion. We will not have access to this room because that is the time that the primary election for the city is taking place. And in its infinite wisdom, it forces us out of the room. We think there are other places they could hold this, but that'll be next month. So just make a note, and we'll send out information and publicize it. But the presentation will be in the Desert Willow Room, which is the large meeting room downstairs at the library. When you go in the library and go down the stairs, you make a left, and that'll take you to that room. We'll still be able to stream, thanks to Brianna's terrific work. There's Brianna. She just sits quietly, but without her, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing today. Another thing I want to bring up, and I'm just doing this as a teaser now, have any of you been to one of our Legends dinner or reception? Lie. stick your hand up in the air, lie about it. All right, what the society has been doing for many years, all the way back to 1984, 2004. That's still a long time ago. Excuse me. We try to look at who's in this city and recognize their contributions that helps build the city of Tempe. And so we recognize folks who have passed on that regrettably we didn't acknowledge while they were still here. And we also recognize those that are still around today and still contributing to the city. And it's really a wonderful evening. It is going to be held here in the plaza. We've done that before, and that'll be on April 13th. That's a Saturday night from 6 to 8 p.m. And if you, I think, go to the museum's website and the society's website, there'll be a link, but I can tell you that it's thslegendsgala.eventbrite.com. That's where you'll be able to get tickets for this event, and we hope that everybody will attend it. In the past, they've really been kind of fabulous and touching experience. And some of the people, most of them you may know, but you'll find out things that you probably didn't know about their contributions to the city. The Peterson House, or lately the city and the museum have been trying to open up some of the historic buildings that belong to the city, one of which is the Peterson House. And there'll be a garden party there on Sunday, March 10th from 3 to 6 p.m. This is one of the few things that there is a charge for. It's $30, but and it's in partnership with some others, but all of the proceeds will go back to the museum. February 23rd, we have a performance. It's in the community room at 7 p.m., a group called the Prime Society. All of those performance events are free, and then Paradise Wins on March 8th. There's a lot of diversity to the kind of performances that we schedule. Paradise Wins, by the way, is one of the first times that we are having a performance at the Eisendrath House. If you haven't been to the Eisendrath House, this is an opportunity for you to attend. It's at 7 p.m. It is free, which is always, I guess, the best we can offer you. And it'll be an outdoor concert. I think it's really going to, that is March 8th. Brianna, the expert, what day of the week? Friday, March 8th. I know how to cheat. All right. I want to thank everybody for coming out. And again, say happy birthday, Arizona. Happy Valentine's Day, African American History Day. And we'll see you next month.